Okay, now on to the most important part, and that is how many contracts should you buy to get the correct amount of risk that you actually want to get on a trade, right? So that your 1 RR of loss when your trade actually loses is going to be equivalent to the actual -1 RR. So what I've done is I've basically written out everything you ever need right here. For the most part, this covers every single aspect of actual risk calculation. Now, we will have a section where, or like another video where we'll talk about specifics around how you can do this for yourself right now in the real world, like with the current amount of money you have or working with brokers or whatever it might be. But this is the entire calculation that you need to be able to do or understand to do this yourself. And what's even better is that for the most part, a lot of this is already calculated for you, as you guys already learned from this simple video of calculating risk, which we'll go over today as well. I'm going to show you this simple version and how it plays into this exact methodology here. So again, the main thing we want is to know how many contracts we need to buy to actually enter a trade. And this is everything we need to know about it. I'm going to do this as an example as well, so we really understand this. These are the steps you want to take. The important things to know and their interactions with account sizes. Here it goes. Your first question that you have to answer for yourself, and this is very specific, is how much is -1 RR for the next trade? Now, this is very important. -1 RR for the next trade. This is very important because how much you risk on a given trade or on the next trade is going to be dependent on a number of factors, right? For some of you, it's going to be very simple. For some of you, you will have already defined a set amount of risk or percent, and then you're going to do the math from there. But very simply, let's assume that we have Anton's account. This is all going to be for Anton. Let's assume at the same time that I have $300,000 of money I can deal with. This is like an average sized account, a decent sized account, whatever you want to consider it. I have $300,000 of funds that I can use for myself. You can apply this kind of equation or math to anything or any account size that you actually start out with, which we'll talk about later for benefits and disadvantages of starting with certain account sizes and what that should look like for you. So the thing I want to decide for myself is how much am I risking on the next trade? Now, the reason that I really specify this idea of the next trade is because how much you risk over time as you get very good at this could change and be dependent on your own confidence in a trade, on your own performance on an account. That really is all it comes down to. If the performance on your account is very positive, or you're not in drawdown, or you're at all-time highs, there are reasons or there are ways to risk a little bit more in terms of percent on the next trade because you can do better during a good time. And similarly, you can reduce. It's called progressive risk. But all we need to understand is what are we risking on the next trade? And if you're starting out or you're kind of new, what I would almost guarantee suggest is that you should be risking between 0.1 to 1.5% max on your accounts. I would even say 0.1 to 1% max. This is what your next trade risk should always be. So this is going to be equivalent to -1 RR. For today's example, to make sure that you can apply this yourself, we're going to say that there's a trader who is using 0.2% risk sizing per trade. So that means that every time they take a loss, they will lose 0.2% of their account. The reason I'm doing this instead of 1% is to really make you start thinking in -1 RR and not making it equal to 1%. So you just understand how this works. So the next trade that I take, the risk is -0.2%, which is now equivalent to our -1 RR. So we have defined what -1 RR for the next trade is going to be. The next trade I take is going to be -1 RR, which is going to be -0.2% because that's a decision that I made for myself, right? Which means in this case, the equivalent of that, very simply, right? And you can see right here, so this is where this first little equation comes in handy, right? Which is our general, very simple risk calculation. And that is the percent we want to risk multiplied by our account size. So this is very important, but this is by our available account size. So you should write this down. And this is important because if you're trading with a prop firm or you're trading with money that's not yours, you need to understand what your available account size is rather than just your account size. Because if you're funded with $1 million, it doesn't mean that you're trading a personal that's equivalent to $1 million. So your available account size is very important. You're not your buying power, but your available account size. So the general starting risk calculations is that you take the percent you want to risk, you multiply it by your available account size, and that is equivalent to minus 1 RR. So we already know that our risk is minus 0.2%. We know my account size is $300,000, which means what? Here it is. That means very, very simply that if I take $300,000 and I multiply it by 0.2%, which is, to make a percentage go to a number, we divide by 100. So if we divide this by 100, right, this number is equal to 0.002, right? That's multiplied by 100. What we do is 300,000 times 0.002. So this is how you do that math. All of you should be able to do this math no matter what your mathematical upbringing was to learn this. Or if you understand this or not, this video should give you all you need from a mathematical standpoint of how to do this calculation, which is $600. So very simply, we want to risk $100 on our next trade. So very simply, minus 1 RR is $600. Our next trade is guaranteed at maximum to lose us $600. We have established our allowability for risk. We have established our mathematical calculation for risk, and we know exactly what we're going to risk on our next trade. So what's our next step? The next step is understanding what is the actual stop size. So this is going to be very deterministic based on what the TradingView tool says and what your broker actually accepts, because that's going to determine how you're going to calculate contracts. However, for stocks, it's as simple as literally looking, or not stocks, but for almost anything, for even cryptos, for stocks. We're going to talk about this in a second, but let's just assume stocks for now. Let's take a look at just an example of a stock. Let's just go and use one that I've traded before. So we'll use Tesla as an example. Let's assume this trade right here. Let's literally assume that this is the exact trade we're taking. And what's happening is we've watched prices went into, let's actually go through step by step so you also get the example of the analysis. We have a higher time frame, a context time frame accumulation playing out. So overall momentum cycles playing out. We went to MMB1, and from that MMB1 of a higher time frame, on the daily now, which is our validation time frame, we've moved into an accumulation MB, big move up. Price pulls back and pauses on the rising averages. So again, it gets bought up at the rising averages. That is momentum MB. We can assume that could be an opportunity for an entry, or for some of you, it could simply just be an entry on this actual time frame with a move like this. Because remember, what you've now learned is that there are cycles to price, and you can have multiple ways of getting involved. Some of you are going to prefer to go inside of that price and study the actual cycle that's playing out and enter through the cycle, like I do at the moment, enter through the cycle. Some of you are going to prefer to even buy through the entire high of momentum MB and manage with a much greater risk, something like this. Some of you are going to buy through the momentum MB and throw a stop in like this. These are things we're going to discuss in a further entry section where we talk about specific edge scenarios, because there is going to be a different edge for a lot of you in terms of the exact rules you look for. But no matter how you want to enter this, we have a market established that is in a good cycle of entry. Moves into momentum MB1, moves higher, momentum MB2, starts moving higher, but then pauses for another momentum MB2. And from there, inside of this action, as it sells down to the rising averages and fails to go lower, I went inside of it to look for my overall cycle delivery on the entry cycle time frame. We had major flush into stage 2, into flush, stage 1, accumulation MB buildup, stage 2, flush, accumulation MB buildup, stage 2, flush, accumulation MB buildup, pure delivery, beautiful, beautiful delivery. Now, when I took this trade, right, I'm using the long and short tool, which is available in TradingView right here on the left. You simply put on your long or your short, you set what you want. Remember, because again, this could be minus 1 RR, this could be minus 1 RR, and it's because of this calculation. So for me, this exact size right here was defined as minus 1 RR. So when I hover over it, and you can go ahead and set up your things to have the same labels as me, these are the inputs I'm using. What you can do now, right, is you can see, you can actually set your account size to your actual account size. So using this, you can go in and go $300,000. My next trade, if I want to risk in dollars, I can say I want to risk $600. Oops, I can risk $600 on my next trade, or I can risk 0.2% because it's the same exact math because of the account size and the math. You can see it's all done for you. You don't have to do this math, but this is how the math works, and it's important to understand it, because if you don't know how the math works, you're going to lose money for reasons that you shouldn't ever lose money for, okay? So you need to understand how the math actually works. So you can set this up if you want, 300K, 0.2%. And you can see when you hover over it, it already calculates the quantity. Remember, I already gave you guys this simple calculation. And we'll talk about examples of this soon as well to give you more examples. But I would have to buy 121 shares. But I'm showing you how to actually get that. So if you notice at the bottom, there's a stop size. And in this case, the stop size is $4.94. Let's take that into account. So now I know that what I want to do, my stop size is minus $4.94. Right? Dollars. This is my stop size. Now I know that. This is important because now what I know is that on the next trade where I want to risk $600, what do I also want to do? Well, I want to risk $600 on how much movement of price? On $4.94. And this right here is the starting principle of why you're able to risk 1R, whether you're trading a tiny stop like this or a large stop like this. And that is very beneficial to understanding for you, because for you, that might be the crux of building your system. Some of you are going to build out a system like this and understand that it's possible to risk the amount you want, and you're able and capable of trading a system like this. Or some of you are going to prefer systems like this where your stops are larger, or where your actual stop is larger, but still you want to risk 1RR or minus 1RR. And now you have a way to calculate that using everything here. And you can see, funny enough, if I actually go over this, if my stop size is this size right here for minus 1RR, you can already see the quantity, or my contract size that I have to purchase, is 121. And if you look at that number, keep an eye on that number, the more I increase the stop size, notice, the more the stop size increases, the more that quantity decreases, right? Because I have to buy less now because I'm allowing for more drawdown, which means now if I buy here and price goes all the way here, this loss at 25 contracts will be the same size loss as this at 121 contracts. So the reason, here's your reasoning now, that we're able to risk 1RR on any defined stop size is because of our contractual, or the amount of contracts we're entering. And we need to understand if we can actually enter a certain amount of contracts. So our stop size is $4.94. Now, this is an important equation. So again, like I wrote right here, this is technically all the math you're ever going to need to know in your own trading. Once you understand this math, there's nothing more you need, but it is important that you understand this. Stop size, to actually calculate proper stop size, and this is going to be broker specific for a lot of you trading potentially like Forex or CFDs of stocks, right? Where you're not actually trading on a real broker. But this is all it is. The stop size is the stop size times the asset size on the broker, okay? So all this means is that on the broker I trade, so a very normal broker that I use, the size of a stock that you're buying, if I'm buying this thing, is 1. So in that case, if I multiply my stop size, which is 4.94 or whatever, times 1, how much was it? 4.94. Let me increase this by 1. 4.94, there we go. 4.94. If I multiply 4.94 by 1, what do I get? I get 4.94. So, but this is an important thing that you need to remember or just have there, because this is going to affect calculations in the actual amounts of size you need to risk. So your stop size times the asset size on the broker is your actual stop size, okay? So very important that you understand that now. There we have it. But in this case, our stop size is very simply $4.94, okay? Now, next step is contracts. So the amount of contracts we actually want to buy is either determined by this number right here, which is already given to us, or is taking 1RR in dollars over the stop size. That's it. So we can do that now, right? The amount of contracts that Anton should risk or should buy on his next trade is simply $600 over $4.94 stop, which is, and again, I'm going to do all this math one time for you guys so you actually understand it and never have any confusion about it, but there's your number, 121.45. Now, I can't buy half of a contract in stocks, so I buy 121 shares, 121 lots or contracts or shares. It doesn't matter what you call this, right? These are 121 contracts. So when you hear people, whoever you hear, saying crazy shit like, I bought 3 contracts of Bitcoin, or I bought 100 lots of Euro USD, or I bought 3 contracts of NQ. All they mean is that they're buying contracts. And this is how you calculate them. So now that you understand that, you're good. You now understand contracts. Now the most important part is, do you have the buying power to purchase the amount of contracts that you actually need to purchase to risk 1RR? This is where people get really confused, but it's not even confusing, and I'll show you why. Very simple. You've already done everything. Your buying power, okay? This is how you check if you have enough buying power. Your buying power is very simply your account size multiplied by the leverage that you are allowed on the asset you're trading. So an example for you, okay, is for Anton, that's me. For me, I get 2x leverage on stocks on my broker. Okay, very simple. 2x leverage on stocks on my broker. Okay, let's just imagine if I'm trading Forex, I get 20 leverage on Forex pairs, right? If I'm trading futures, I get, I don't remember the leverage, I think 4x leverage on futures. If I'm trading crypto, which I'm not trading, but let's say I was, let me move this out so you guys can see it. If I'm trading crypto, I get 100x leverage. I think people can get up to 100x leverage on crypto. Again, the point is, I'm doing this as an example for you. So if I asked you, what is Anton's buying power on a 300K account? Well, 300K times 2x, I have 600K of buying power. 300K times 20, I have $6 million of buying power. 4x on futures, 3, 6, 9, 12. 1.2 mil buying power. 100 times 300K is 3 mil, 30 mil. 30 mil buying power. This is it. That's all buying power is. This is the simplest way to calculate it. So now you know how to calculate buying power. So how much buying power do I have for my next trade, which is on Tesla? Well, I know that Tesla has I have a leverage of 2x. So if I'm trading this, I have 2x leverage on my money, which means if I'm trading a $300,000 account, my buying power is simply set to 600K. And the simplest last question is, do I actually have the buying power to purchase the amount of shares or contracts that I want? Well, here's your final equation. Contracts multiplied by the asset price has to be less than or equal to the buying power. That's it. There's really nothing more. So let me give you all an example with this exact thing and then with a few others just so you understand how to do it. So if I need to buy 121 shares, what does that mean? Well, if I'm buying at exactly this price and I'm buying 121 shares, and that price is what? Look at the right-hand side here, is 342.41. What does that mean? Well, here it goes. That means I'm buying 121 shares or contracts. Notice that I can use these words interchangeably, right? Here's that. How many contracts? 121. What's the asset price at the time of entry? That's it, right? It is 342. Okay. So 121 times an asset price of 342. Yep. 342 is 41,382. So for exactly this example here, right? I get basically 42,000. 42,000. Now the question is that amount less than or equal to my buying power? Well, what's my buying power on this asset? 600K. So, is the condition true? Yes. So I can theoretically buy this position with no problem. Okay, that's it. I have enough money, I have enough buying power to purchase this position. Now, if I didn't have 2x leverage and I only had 1x leverage, could I still buy this trade? Yes. Okay, so this is the benefit of buying power or margin or leverage. And that's that sometimes you need the additional leverage to risk the amount you want. So an example of this, if we take this to the next level, right, is actually we can make it even simpler. We can do something like this, where we'll just open up Excel. So we'll do a little thing with you guys here, okay? I'm just going to show you. We can make this like super simple if we really want to. I'll move this up here so you guys can see it. But very simply, all we're doing is we're saying, right, like, can we buy a trade, right? So if my account size is, let's just say account size is this, 300,000. Yeah. And my risk size is 0.2%, right? Then we know my actual risk per trade is these two, right? So we have that $600. That's where that $600 comes from. Right, so none of us are confused about that $600. We understand that. And we know that if a stop size, right, is 4.24 on a trade, right, then we know that we need to buy this many contracts, about 141, okay? About 142, as we said, right? And then how much would that cost us to buy? Right? What is the actual cost of that trade is the way we think about it. Well, the cost of that is this times the price of the asset at the entry price, which for us was 342. Now, bear with me here. This is confusing. Don't worry about it. All I'm doing is I'm doing the same math we just did. I'm just making it a little bit easier. And this is a number. Okay. So, and our buying power, right, as we know, is simply this times the leverage, which is 2, right? And then simply, right, if we can write an if statement, if this number is less than this number, then we can purchase. Here we are. We can purchase, right? Otherwise, you can't buy it. You don't have enough money, right? That's where this idea comes from. So you can see in this case here, exactly as the math that we just did. Let me actually increase the size of this for all of you so you can see it. Okay, cool. Right, with all the math we just did, it's very simple, right? We can purchase this stock or this position. We fully meet the conditions for purchasing it. Now, it's important to do this because for some of you, this is going to be very different. Imagine your leverage was 1. Now, again, the buying power is still 300,000. So, of course, we can still purchase it, right? We still have 300,000 buying power. We can still purchase this position, this exact one. Now, imagine the next trade that you wanted to take was 1% risk. Let's say you guys wanted to risk 1% on your trade. Well, if you were risking 1%, notice that it would cost you a very big percentage of your buying power, but theoretically, it would still be enough, right? Now imagine some of you were trading an even lower time frame. Let's say for whatever reason, during this time here, right, you guys were trading a lower time frame, and for you, maybe an entry was on the 5-minute chart. So let's say the entry you wanted to take was this double MB, 1, 2, right here. Let's say this is the double MB you wanted to purchase. There's nothing wrong with that. This trade could be very valid. Or let's say because this one likely would have gotten stopped out of break even. Let's look at this trade right here. 1, 2. That's a valid trade. Let's say you bought this trade right here. This is still a great trade, a very good one. And this one goes on to make a very nice mover, and you would have made an absurd amount of money on this trade because this trade ends up being really good. But the question is, can you risk the amount that you want, right? Same thing now, look. The stop size is now 1.04. Okay, if the stop size is 1.04, what does that mean? Well, that means we'll make the stop size 1.04, or all of you can go back now and do the exact same math that I just taught you, but I'm just doing it through here because we have, it's just easy. What do you notice? So if you want to risk 1% on a trade, and you're risking it on 1.04 in this case on this given asset at this price, which is at a price of 342, right? You're unable to do it. You can't buy it. You do not have enough money. You don't have enough money based on the leverage. Now, if you had 4x leverage, right? If you had 4 times leverage on this money, you could purchase it, but you don't. Not all of us get 4x leverage, and not all of us are trading with brokers that give you this much leverage. So this is how you use leverage or understandings of buying power in deciding if something can be bought. And simultaneously, this is exactly how you risk 1 RR in any trade. So if you really want to understand, like if you're able to risk something, and by the way, this kind of calculator will actually be available to you guys on the website as well. So I'm going to make that a thing so you just have access to the date. Like you can literally go and type it in if you want. But for the most part, this is all you need to know. If you're taking a trade, right? And this is not broker specific yet. This is specifically just to do with if you're trading on a universal broker that doesn't use any different asset sizes or anything. So this is going to be for most of you. But if you're trading a normal thing like this, right? All you have to do is you can set up in TradingView, like I've already shown you, you can set up all your things here, the account size, the risk that you want, and simply look at this number, 121. Okay. And what you could do is you could take it a step further, and every time you're about to take a trade, you could multiply this number by this number to make sure you have enough buying power. Okay. That's it. So now some of you might have questions regarding, how might this work on like Forex, right? Because some of you are trading Forex, right? And how do I actually make use of all this? And what do you mean by this whole thing about asset prices and stuff and everything you're talking about? So very simply, if I go to like Euro US dollar right now, okay? And let's say I'm on a 30-minute, and let's say I want to take a trade, and let's say for whatever reason, I can't even see a valid trade on this thing. Let's just say for whatever reason, you took this as an accumulation, and you took this double MB right here. So MB1, FFMB2, and you took this trade, stop under the low, and you were looking to take it up. Same thing goes. We have a $300,000 account. That's already worked out. 300K account. I want to risk 0.2%. Okay, very simple. So this is where it gets really important. Take a look at this. What do you see, and what do you notice is something that's interesting here? Well, you can see the quantity here, right? The amount of contracts we need to buy is 731,000 contracts. What the fuck? How does that work? Well, it's not really that crazy, actually. Okay, so in Forex, right, you will apply the same thing. The important thing here is that this is theoretically the amount you would buy. If I was trading right here on this broker exactly, right, I would simply go here and I would buy 700,000 and buy. That's it. I'd buy. Done. Right there. Boom. I buy it. Now, can I do that? Do I have the buying power for that? Well, let's do the math, right? If I have to buy 700,000 contracts at what price? 1.048. How much money do I need? I need $733,600. Now again, if you remember, if I have 20x leverage on Forex pairs, what does that mean? Well, I already showed you. That means I have 6 mil buying power. Is this number less than 6 mil? The answer is yes. Therefore, I can make a buying position on this. So for instance, with Men Funding, I think it's on the screen, right? Yeah. On Men Funding, if you're trading Forex, because we have Forex there, specifically, you get 20 leverage, which means if you're trading a 200K account, that's 4 mil of buying power. And if you're trading a 2 mil account and you wanted to, 200K account and you want to enter this trade at 0.2% risk, you'd be able to enter it. Now, the reason I said something very specific about the stop size and multiplying it by the broker's asset or by the contract size is because on a broker, for instance, right, the stop size 0.00082 is not actually what the stop size becomes, right? So instead of this being 487,000 contracts, right, the thing that a lot of Forex brokers do is they say that one contract, one lot, is equal to 100,000 shares. Right? So this is where you might have heard or seen this number for the Forex side. So all that means is that if I take my 487,000 that TradingView is telling me I should buy, I'm not buying 487,000 contracts on my broker. My broker reads things in 100K. So if I divide it by 100K, that's the amount of lots I would buy, right? So that's it. So that's the only small caveat of misunderstandings that people have with like FX, because FX can get a little bit crazy, since brokers measure their sizes or contract sizes a little bit differently. But most of the time, this is how it works. It's like 100K for XXX USD pairs that have like 5 decimal points. This is because Forex is traded in like such small intervals, right? You can have the same thing happen for some cryptos, but for the most part, that's really it. The first part of the video is the main part, right? If you still have a ton of confusion with this, play around with it a little bit, play around with it in practice tools, in like competition environments, and like Mint Funding has a competition environment, and it'll become very clear, very simple. Okay, but for the most part, this is it, right? If I was trading with a normal broker that calculates things normally, very simply, that's it. For this trade exactly right here, I would buy 700,000 shares right there, and I simply have enough money to do so. So there's no problem with having to buy that amount for this exact trade right here. So I would, and that would be it. And you also understand now how you can purchase your given sizes, and if you have the correct size to purchase, by doing and using this simple tool. So for instance, right, if I'm trading a 200K account now, and I was trading MSTR, which I did trade, and I entered this trade right here, right, with a stop of 9.35, well, I already have the answer. If I want to risk, so I usually risk 0.5% on my trades. If I have a 300K account and I want to risk 0.5%, I have to buy 160 shares. That's it. I have to buy 160 shares. There's nothing more. And can I do that? Well, 160 times the entry price, which is 342, is 54,000. And how much money do I have? 300K. What's my buying power? 600K. So can I buy this position? Yep. I have enough money to buy this position. So some small little important like details is that when you hear someone say, for instance, that they have a $54,000 position, that doesn't mean they're risking $54,000, as you can see right here. This is why I discussed with you guys the importance of understanding risk, because when you hear someone tell you, for instance, or if you remember from a prior portal video, if you heard someone tell you, I caught Bitcoin from 60K to 95K. Holy shit. It doesn't mean anything. That size doesn't mean anything, because it matters how did you risk? How much did you risk? What percentage of your account did you have on the risk that you took the trade on, right? If someone said, I made 62.9% on my position, or I made 62.9% because that's how much it went up, the question is on how much risk, on what kind of risk. It doesn't actually mean that they made this much money. Were you leveraged? Were you unleveraged? How did you buy the thing that you bought? That's where this value understanding comes from, right? So if you heard me say, wow, guys, I'm in a $55,000 position, that doesn't mean I'm taking 55K of risk. It means that I had to use $55,000 of buying power to risk 1 RR. Which in my case would be 0.5%. Or in this case, on 300K, it would be equivalent to risking, what is it? How much money? $600, right? Or $1,200? Let's just go look. On this trade right here. Let's open it up. So 300K at 0.5% risk is a loss of... $1,500, yeah, $1,500. So to lose $1,500 on this trade right here, I had to buy a $50,000 position. If it then went against me and I lost my trade, I would not lose 50,000, because what's happening is I'm buying back the shares because I'm getting out of them, and I'm simply losing the $1,500. That was the calculation. That's what the calculation was based on. And simultaneously, if price goes in my direction and delivers and I get to manage my trade, which is what I got to do in this case, and it goes up 11, let's say this is 25 RR. If it goes up 25 RR, well, we already know how to do this. If I made 25 R multiples on my risk, which was $1,500, then I made $37,500 from all the profits of this trade, right? You already know how to do that math. So that is it. That is your entire understanding of calculation. Now, that might be a lot, especially if you've never done calculations before or you've never learned about calculations and you're just like, oh, this is what risk looks like. But this is how it functions. Do not get taken astray. Don't let someone take you around the block when they say things like, I made 1,000% on this trade. I made 40%. I caught Bitcoin at 100K. I made 30K on a move on Bitcoin. None of this means anything. What matters is, what was your -1 RR of risk? How much RR did you make out of the trade? Did you have the money to risk it? Does it all make sense? And if so, congratulations on a good system, because nothing else matters. Very important. So that is why, like, for instance, if I'm trading Tesla, like I did, right, and I'm taking a loss. Let's say this trade went up and then came, and maybe let's say I didn't move to break even and I took a loss on this trade. A lot of people get really confused because on here they'll see this number, 1.44%, and they'll say, so you lost 1.44%. No, right? We don't care about that anymore. How much did I lose? I lost the amount that I lose based on the amount of contracts I bought. Can this -1 RR be the same as this being -1 RR? Yes. Why? Because of the calculation for how many contracts we lost. Nothing else matters. So now you know how to set yourself to a risk. You have the examples that you need to use to understand. Here are the examples. To walk yourself through how to calculate the risk for any trade that you take. You have the simple tool of how to use TradingView to actually calculate that risk. And on top of that, if we really want to get into everything, you also have at your fingertips now an entire approach, right, to understanding cycles, momentum cycles, entry cycles, stages, and deliveries of markets, and different areas and opportunities for entries based on who you are, and different stop size preferences and ways to set stops, and the defined risk based on who you are. I don't know where I was going with that, but you have all of that and the calculation now, so you can go ahead and case study and turn the case study into actuality. Okay? And that's how you calculate risk. That's everything you need to know about risk. That's literally it. And now we can actually move on to the next sections that I really wanted to move on to, which is, well, further trading-based things, right? How do we transform this risk into positive break-even rates, into positive data collection, into more examples of actual trades? How do we use, for instance, the MENTFX screener, which you all have access to put ourselves in the market and decide what markets we're going to actually trade and if they're worth trading and why they might be worth trading? How do we do all this? How do we put it all into action? Let's go and take a look. See you in the next one.